Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Bob Hieronimus, and our executive producer and research assistant is Dr. Laura Kortner. Our engineer is Anita Brockington. Our guest tonight is an early surf band and psychedelic musician, Merrell Fankhauser, original writer of the legendary surf song Wipeout. We last interviewed Merrell in 2014 when we talked to him about the mysterious signals from Malibu and the songs he wrote about the many UFO sightings off the coast of California. People were recording strange sounds coming from a dome-like structure under the Pacific Ocean, and Merrell incorporated these sounds into his songs like Messages from the Dome. Tonight, we're going to get updated on these anomalies and Merrell's recording career, as well as his search for evidence of the ancient civilization of Lemuria. Merrell Fankhauser has led one of the most diverse and interesting careers in music. He was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and moved to California when he was just 13 years old. Merrell went on to become one of the innovators of surf music and psychedelic folk rock. His travels from Hollywood to his 15-year jungle experience on the island of Maui have been documented in numerous music books and magazines in the United States and Europe. Merrell has gained legendary international status throughout the field of rock music. His credits include over 400 songs published and released in 1973. Merrell and his group, Mu, spelled M-U, moved to the island of Maui to further their studies of the fabled lost continent of Mu, or Lemuria, which some legends say existed 11,500 years ago in the Pacific near the Hawaiian Islands. In 1994, with the release of the film Pulp Fiction, instrumental surf music came back in a big way. Delphi Records reissued all of the material of Merrell's early surf band, The Impacts, on CD, and several other foreign and domestic labels also released Impacts and CDs. Merrell's UFO encounters are featured in one of my favorite books, Alien Rock, The Rock and Roll Extraterrestrial Connection by Michael Luckman. Welcome back to 21st Century Radio, Merrell Fankhauser. Hello?
It's good to hear your voice, Dr. Bob.
Oh, okay, I thought we lost you there. Well, it's been almost 7 years since you've joined us in 21st Century Radio, and that time flies really quickly. What have you been doing since Messages from the Dome?
You know, I must say, I just can't believe it's been 7 years since we last talked. It's amazing. You're right. Time flies. Well, a lot has been happening since we last talked, and since the Signals from Malibu album came out, several of my older albums from the 60s and 70s have been reissued, and the Message to the Universe album that was featured in Michael Luckman's book. They shot the cover and put it on one of the pages in the Rock and Roll Extraterrestrial Connection. That's one of my favorite books also. And then we've just been doing a lot of the Tiki Lounge TV show that I do that's been on the air here in California and Hawaii, now in its 20th year, which
fantastic.
I can't believe either. And a label from Los Angeles, Cleopatra Records, called me up and said, Merrell, do you have any live recordings? Well, I had all these recordings that were done on the stage here in the back lot, and I had so many great players, including Ed Cassidy, the great drummer from Spirit.
Yeah.
And so I went in the studio and mixed a lot of these live recordings and sent it off to them, and they said, we love it. So they put that out as Tiki Lounge Live, and that album's sold pretty well and gotten good radio play all over, even in Europe and South America. And then a year ago, we got back together with some of my old Maui band. They flew over, the drummer and the violinist, and we recorded a new album. And they found a tape, Bob, in a studio on Maui of a song that I totally forgot about called Crystal Blue Ocean that we had recorded in 1977 and never finished. And I went, how did I forget this? It's a great song. And the drummer brought it over on an analog tape, and I transferred it to my digital multi-track, and we finished that song off and recorded a bunch of new ones, and the album is titled Oceans of Intelligence. And I sent it to several labels, including Warner Brothers, who really liked it. But then when COVID hit, they all went on lockdown. So the album is sitting here on the shelf, and hopefully, sometime in the near future, that album will come out. But I plan to send the title song out to certain radio stations, Oceans of Intelligence. And that's pretty much what's been happening.
So a lot of things that you had worked on a long time ago and created have come back into action for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, like the songs from the 60s, are in several movies. We had one a few years ago in Chappaquiddick, the movie about Ted Kennedy, and I've been getting a lot of songs in TV series, one that was on Showtime, The Truth About the Harry Kubert Affair, and we have several more offers, and one in a movie that we'll talk about a little bit later right now.
Well, so your work is, in a certain sense, my work is paralleling, close to going through what you're going through, which is I painted a bus in 1969, went up to Woodstock. It became a world classic at that particular time. And in the last 3 years, we just recreated that bus. I created other artwork at the same time and other murals, and we've had them back again, creating them again. There's something very good about seeing things that you've done decades ago holding up to the same quality which your work does. And I think that's a very big and important thing to do. It doesn't happen to many people. You have to work pretty hard to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that is wonderful. I had when it was the 45th anniversary of Woodstock, I had a photographer on that was there at Woodstock and took a lot of great pictures, and he was so happy that he did that and still had the pictures.
It meant a lot to a lot of people because it was a time of great peace and love at that time.
Yes, and that's certainly what we need more of today.
That's exactly right. But that's what the kind of work you do elevates consciousness, which can move us in the direction of love and caring again. Because that's what higher consciousness does. What is the Marquis Who Lifetime Achievement Award in Entertainment? I heard you were awarded in 2020. What was that about, and what does it mean?
Well, the Marquis publication, every year, they pick individuals that they feel have really done remarkable achievements and, have just done things that they feel they should be rewarded for. And a lot of them are authors and musicians and other people. And it's people that they feel have accomplished excellence and longevity in their career.
Well, you got that both down, yeah.
So that really was an honor to me. It just was great. And they did a big press release that went out worldwide in print and online. And there's a book that's being published every year. They do this with a bio on each individual with their accomplishments listed, and they send you a nice plaque. So when this happened, all of a sudden I was getting emails and phone calls from record companies I hadn't heard from in years that I'm on in England and Germany and, oh gosh, even Spain and France and Italy.
This is great. This is great.
They all wanted to reissue a lot of my older 60s and 70s that I mentioned before, albums. And there's one album, you've probably heard of this, it's a sort of a folk rock. They called it psychedelic, but it really wasn't that psychedelic to me. It was released in 1967 called Fapper Dockley.
Fapper Dockley.
And that album, Dr. Bob, sells a sealed copy of the original for $1,000 a copy now.
Holy cow.
And I get people almost monthly emailing me, you don't happen to have one of those left, do you? And I wish I would have thrown 100 of them back in the closet back in the day, but I did have about 7 of them that were stashed in a closet in my mom's house, and I totally forgot about them when I was living on Maui. And one day when I was living in my cabin out in the jungle, I see these 2 guys coming down the trail that I didn't recognize, and it was 2 record store owners and collectors from Germany that flew all the way to Maui, and it took them 3 days before anybody would tell them where I actually lived and how to get to my cabin. And they come down the trail and they ask my girlfriend at the time, Mary Lee, the violinist, yeah, we're looking for der Merrell Fankhauser. And she said, oh, he's right over here by those papayas. So they came over and they told me the story. He said, yeah, we bought your Fapper Dockley album, an open one at a record fair in Berlin for only $650.
Is that all?
This was in 1978. And I'm going, what? Say that again?
Yeah.
I had no idea that album was worth that much. And it just amazed me. He says, oh, yeah, it's one of the most sought-after 60s albums that there is. So the next trip I made back here to California to the mainland, I asked my mom, oh, is that box of albums still there? And she said, yeah. So
what a good
I started
mom.
a little mail order business then, and right away I sold 4 of them without any problem for $1,000 each. And a guy from Austria sent me $1,200. And I said, you sent me too much. And he said, that's okay. I'm so happy to have it. Keep the extra money.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so things like that have happened that are just, wonderful, that people appreciate the music that much.
When you do quality stuff, it's bound to be that way. As you know as well as I do, that a number of groups don't survive, mainly because they don't go in depth in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And also that your songs or your music is intentional in the sense of elevating people's awareness of things and bringing people together. And you know as well as I do, that is a sacred thing. As well, we've mentioned that a little earlier before, but it is a sacred thing that we have lost over the past 4 years, and hopefully we'll get most of it back.
Yeah, I feel so lucky to have this gift of, the songs that I write, and that they just come to me naturally somehow.
Mm-hmm. You must have obviously a lot of spiritual teachers working with you.
Yeah, and when I was on Maui, I joined the Tibetan Dharma Center that was there, and the lamas, they paid to have the lamas and Rinpoches come over from Tibet, and I meditated with them, and they gave me the name Lodru Jantsal. And
can we pick
translates
up? We have to take a break right now. Can we come back to that when we return, please?
Okay.
Okay. With our guest Merrell Fankhauser, his psychedelic and surf music, some of his songs appearing in new movies, we'll talk about that, other achievements and awards, plus his explorations of Hawaii, searching for the lost continent of Mu and UFO encounters. MerrellFankhauser.com.
Hello there, this is George Martin, and you're listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronimus.
Come on down to the Tiki Lounge, a little grass shack with a bamboo bar. It could be any island, maybe not too far. Exotic drinks we'd like you to try. Dance away the night at the Tiki Lounge. The sounds of Martin.
Well, welcome back to 21st Century Radio. You're listening to the sounds of Tiki Lounge. It's been going on for 20 years. 20 years. But when did that start again? Not just 20 years ago, but I mean, it's older than that, isn't it?
The Tiki Lounge show? No, it started in the beginning of 2001.
2001. So it is, yeah. That's a very nice tune. And, of course, we want to thank our brother Sir George Martin for introducing you on this. Sir George Martin is one of the people we focused on in our new book, which is just coming out in just about a week, the second book on the Yellow Submarine, Part 2. Our guest right now is Merrell Fankhauser. Fankhauser. And, hey, what about there's a new movie using one of your old songs. Is it called Lila, L-I-L-A? Is it Lila or Lila?
Lila, yeah, that's
Lila.
from the Saperdockley album, but I did want to finish that sentence.
Oh, yes.
You'll get a kick out of this. When I took a retreat with the Tibetan lamas on Maui, I was the first person to play them music from this part of the hemisphere, and they loved it, and they gave me the name Lodru Jantsal, which translates to Oceans of Intelligence.
Oceans of Intelligence.
Yes, and right then, it wasn't too long after that title, Bob, stuck in my head, and a song just magically popped out in 15 minutes. And when I lived in my little jungle house, I had to have a cassette machine or something there handy, because if you don't get it down and write it down, it can disappear and go away.
Yep.
But anyhow, now here we are, in 2021, and I've used the song, and that is the title of the new album that hopefully will come out. But you were asking about my song, Lila. That's from the 1967 Fapper-Dockley album that we mentioned, the valuable collector's item. And it's in the movie The Trial of the Chicago 7. And that was really something to get in that movie. And Aaron Sorkin, who I really admire, wrote and produced the movie.
How fortunate.
Yeah, and it's about the 1968 disruption of the Chicago Democratic Convention, and people that were protesting the Vietnam War. And the movie, you can see it on Netflix right now, and it's in select theaters, and it is so good, Dr. Bob. I mean, I did an interview with a radio station on the phone about 2 weeks ago, and the host was saying, this has got to be nominated for an Academy Award, and I think Sacha Baron Cohen did a great job of portraying Abby Hoffman in the movie, and it's just great, and it's a big honor for me to have my song chosen to be in that movie.
Obviously, yeah, sure.
It's in an interesting scene, too. The police and FBI were on TV and on the radio saying, now, if anybody out there knows about anything that's planned, a disruption or incitement of a riot, please call this number. And they had a person in an office at the police department in a room they called the conspiracy room.
Oh.
Yeah. And they would answer the phone, and then, anybody that had any knowledge of something that was going to happen, they would take it down. Well, it's interesting that they put my beautiful folk rock ballad from 1967 in the background of when this person is answering the phone. That's where it's at in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we can play a little bit of this song, can't we?
Oh, great.
Do you mind if we do that now?
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Okay, let 'em roll. Okay, excellent. Excellent. Fine job there.
All right.
So this has real special meaning to you, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. And, a beautiful blonde hippie girl inspired me to write that. And she was just so full of love and compassion and peace for, all the brothers and sisters back then. And she was an artist that painted these beautiful paintings. And she inspired me to write this song and probably a couple of others.
Well, it's nice to have a muse every now and then. Now, another of your songs from the same 1967 album is Tomorrow's Girl, and it was also included in a box set that was nominated for a 2011 Grammy. Will you please tell us about that?
Yeah, that was in a special category for older recordings, and I think we might have had a good chance to win if a bunch of Beatles outtakes weren't in the same category. That won, but everybody was hoping for the best, and all the people at Warner's and Rhino that put out this beautiful box set, and it's called Where the Action Is, L.A. Nuggets, 1965 to 68. And I did pretty good financially off of that one song being on that box set because it sold very well. And my band and I moved to L.A. in 1967 to record and do gigs. And the Sunset Strip was just a mecca for the peace and love,
certainly
vibe there. Yeah. And like you were talking about your van that was painted up, I mean, that was something that you would see constantly, with like murals on mostly Volkswagen vans that everybody had. And the song "Tomorrow's Girl" was there again, inspired by the free-flowing lifestyle of the hippie girls that you would see on the Sunset Strip, and a lot of radio play, and all the chart action that my song "Tomorrow's Girl" was getting. Got Dick Clark's attention.
Oh, my.
And he played it on American Bandstand in 1967.
Isn't that something? Jeez,
and that just made our popularity, the group was called Merrell and the Exiles at the time, go through the roof. And we played all the top spots down there, the Whiskey A Go-Go.
Oh, gosh.
In Starwood, which was originally called Ciro's, and did a lot of concerts and concert with Country Joe McDonald, and it was just a wonderful time, Bob. I still think about that, and it all almost seems like a dream now.
Well, do you mind if we listen to a little bit of that, Tomorrow's Girl?
Sure.
Oh, I'm just told that we don't have it. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I thought I sent it to Laura.
Well, so did I. But
yeah.
I don't know. You can never tell what's going on these days in the mail. That's for sure.
Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah, we just got stuff that was mailed to us 4 months ago. Jeez, whiz. Well, okay. Well, we will get back to your music in just a bit, but I want to switch gears now and talk about our mutual interest in unusual and unexplained phenomena. Now, these past 3 years have been full of unprecedented disclosure from the U.S. government and reporting by the media, the New York Times at first, that is a complete reversal to the past 60 to 70 years of denial and ridicule. What do you make of these naval pilot sightings of the so-called Tic-Tac UFOs and the New York Times and other reporting about them? I never would have thought the New York Times was going to do anything like that.
That was a huge surprise to me, Dr. Bob. And, finally, they're letting some of this come out. But there's been people all along, including scientists and other, pilots and people I've talked to that have believed this for years. My father was a a flight instructor and a charter pilot, and he taught me to fly when I was 14 years old. And he believed in UFOs. He said, there's got to be somebody else out there. It's too egotistical to think that we're the only ones in the universe.
That's
so
for sure.
I think it's great.
Well, I'm feeling so sorry for those people that got punished for opening their mouths, and some of them got killed by our government.
Yes.
And that's something that's not come out and discussed yet, but we all know there were a number of people that lost their lives in the military because they opened their mouths and said, "Hey, I did see a UFO." And if they talked about it, they were in trouble. I think that was one of the worst things our country has done. We've done worser, but that was one of them.
Yeah.
Will you tell? We got to take a break here on 21st Century Radio again with our guest Merrell Fankhauser, and we are going to get into the UFOs for a little while, and Moo, which I will enjoy very much, and I think our listeners will too. We'll be right back. For the Beatles fans in your life, makes a great present, announcing our new book on the Beatles' Yellow Submarine, on sale now at yellowsubmarinebook.com. It couldn't be simpler. That's yellowsubmarinebook.com. Full of color with over 200 illustrations, plus all new interviews and symbolic interpretations. It's all in the mind, inside the Beatles' Yellow Submarine Volume 2. Loads of valuable bonus prizes and contests offered on our Facebook page, /Yellow Submarine Book. Follow us there and win some toys. This book dives deep. Haven't you ever wondered what it all means when we say we all live in a yellow submarine? Well, order this book and find out. yellowsubmarinebook.com. That's yellowsubmarinebook.com.
Bomb, 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 bomb. Hi, this is Fred Johnson, the original Mr. Blue Moon bassman of the Marcells, and you're listening to 21st Century Radios with Dr. Bob Hieronimus. Blue Moon.
Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. And I think my producer didn't forget at all. As a matter of fact, she had to work on it a little bit, and that's what we're listening to, Tomorrow's Girl. Let's go back to that and tell us again what this means to you.
Yes, Dr. Bob, that was Tomorrow's Girl. I guess Laura found it. And that was the song that was on the Grammy-nominated Where the Action Is, L.A. Nuggets, 1965 to 1968. And that was my song with Merrell and the Exiles that ended up Grammy-nominated all of these years later, but it was played on Dick Clark's American Bandstand in 1967.
That is so fascinating that he would see that 67 was a big year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. You know, that's when the whole psychedelic thing happened, and the Summer of Love was brewing, and it was just a fabulous time.
Well, we always envied that time period and thinking about California, because being on the East Coast, it was a lot. It was a little bit different here.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a good time in New York City, etc., but still beyond that was not much. But California in '67 was a whole other world.
It was. It was just wonderful.
A lot of people think that it was just about drugs, but it had a lot more to do than that. Especially,
oh, no, it was like something sprinkled pixie dust all over everybody, and everybody just felt enlightened and spiritual, and not everybody was doing drugs.
That's right. Yeah, but we can't. There's a real problem with drugs when you get into certain types of music and the quality of it. I know in my conversations with Jimi Hendrix, we talked about that a little bit. You knew Jimmy, didn't you?
Well, I met him briefly, didn't really get to talk to him that much, but they filmed the Rainbow Bridge movie on Maui, and a lot of my friends were in the movie, and they got to hang out with him more. And here, in 2011, we flew over, and the ones that were still with us on the planet, we interviewed them, and we did a documentary that my label in England put out, Gonzo Multimedia, and they put a DVD and a soundtrack CD out on a package. And it was interesting what they all had to say about hanging out with Jimmy.
What did they say?
Oh, just that he was really not as far out as the media tried to make him. He was a real down-to-earth, almost shy and sensitive person. And he really believed in UFOs.
Yeah, well,
the story that I have, the guy that went in the crater, Haleakala crater, with Jimmy and Chuck Wine, the producer, and he talked in our documentary about how this silver disc came in broad daylight and hovered over the floor of the crater, and Jimi Hendrix walked out with his arms open and said, "Welcome, Space Brothers."
That sounds
and they were trying to get the big, huge cameras, that they had back then set up in time, and then the thing disappeared. But that also, I told that story to Michael Luckman, and it was in his book. He's another person that we talked on the phone quite a bit, and just a really great guy. I was sorry when he left us.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing that I talked about with Jimmy, I was going to be doing record album covers.
Ah.
And when I found out what you were getting paid for a record album cover in those days was $100. Now, you can't live on $100, especially with what you got to put into doing the album cover. It could take you months to do it. So how can you afford to do it? But one of the first things when I always traveled where other artists and musicians were, I would carry my journals, and so he was in this one place in New York there where Clapton and everyone else got together. And so I was doing some drawings at that time. He came over to me because he knew that I was supposed to be there to talk to him about music and all that. But the first thing he talked about was, when he looked at my journal, he saw the pyramid and the eye and the triangle. And the first thing he said was, "That is important. That is very important." He was very serious about the meaning of it. He kept saying, "Bob, what do you think this really means? It has many different levels of consciousness," because he was quite aware of that. Unfortunately, the people that surrounded him didn't want to hear stuff like that. It was annoying to them because they kind of, how it is when you have crowds around there that are parts of your friends and everything like that. They like to dominate you, him. And so it was a very unpopular thing for he and I to get together and talk like that in the middle of that. But that's what he wanted to talk about because he loved this country deeply. I think that, of course, came out when he did up there at Woodstock, but he did that before he did that at Woodstock. Sorry for moving in this direction. I just had some very fond memories there that I really miss. We still are in touch with his sister, and hopefully she'll be joining us again in the coming months. I haven't talked to her for quite a while, though.
Great. I know he loved Maui, and he wanted to come back there and build a studio.
Oh,
but
that would
didn't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the studios can sometimes be big problems because of all the people that come in there whenever they want, and I think you're well aware of that kind of stuff. Now,
well, if you own it yourself, I've owned a recording studio here for 20 years, but it's in the back of my house, and I control who comes over here, and people see me on the street, and they give me tapes and things, and they want to record, and usually when I listen to their music, I just don't want to do it. You know, I'm very careful about who I let even know where I live.
I understand that. Being an artist myself, when I have people who obviously keep bringing their stuff to me to analyze, you got to be very careful because you don't want to hurt feelings, but what are you going to do?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Being an artist in any level is hard work. You really need to focus on it. And that's why I think you are, in part, so successful. Now, our discussion about the Malibu anomaly fits in nicely with your song Calling from a Star that was featured in 2018 on a UK label compilation. I might have mispronounced this, titled Eclectia.
It's Eclectia.
Yeah, Eclectia, with 17 groups and artists that all claim their music was influenced by UFOs or aliens. Will you please tell us about your song and this album?
Yeah, the album is very interesting because it features groups from the United States, Canada, and Europe. And it's the brainchild of UK radio host Joanna Summerscale. And she picked my Calling from a Star song to open up. It's a 2-disc set to open up the album. And I've done several interviews with her in England over the phone, and she's very tuned in, and this is, her thing. And somehow, Bob, they got the rights to do a parody. I don't know if you've seen the album cover. You can look it up on the Internet. It's available on the Internet. But they did a parody of the Sgt. Pepper's cover.
Oh.
And down at the bottom where the Beatles were standing, they have gray aliens. And then they have all of these people and UFO researchers on the cover, and then different artists, musicians that are in the album, and including me. I'm up in the left-hand corner, just down from Neil Young and above David Bowie on the cover. But if you look it up on the Internet, you can see the cover, and it's really interesting how they did this. And I got it on, a couple hundred radios in the United States, and I know they're still promoting it in Europe, and I got it on a station in Brazil for them. So there's some of them that have videos out, and of course, my song, Calling from a Star, there's a video of me performing it at the top of Haleakala Crater. And we went to the top of the crater in 1974. my band Moo and I, just to watch the sunset. And there was a group of tourists and an older gentleman that was in the Second World War in the Navy, and I was talking to him. Sun went down. Not too long after the sun went down, this blue pulsating orb came over the floor of the crater and shined a light down on the floor and lit it up. And right when that happened, two other smaller ones came out of the main big one and went up on each side of it and formed a tetrahedron, an inverted pyramid. And everybody's going, oh, my God, what is that? And the old Navy guy said, man, all of my years in the service, he said, I never saw anything like that, even in the war. And we watched that thing. It was at least 3 minutes or more. And then the two smaller ones went back into the big one, and we're all just going, ooh and ah. And before you could almost blink, it shot straight up and disappeared. And we drove down in our van back to our house in Haiku on Maui, and I had this feeling something was going to happen. I turned on the
We have
reel
to stop. We have to pause right here and pick up when we come up back next hour. We're going to be listening to Calling from a Star and discuss that. Is that okay with you? Okay. All right. Break time on 21st Century Radio with our guest, Merrell Fankhauser. And you can reach him by merrellfankhauser.com. Like our 21st Century Radio Facebook page to find out about these guests, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Share on 21st Century Radio.